Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Aya Schumann. I will be your moderator. I'm a member of the FDA Stakeholder Engagement staff within the Office of External Affairs. As a reminder, this call is being recorded and the recording will be made available on the FDA's YouTube page. Today, we're joined by Dr. Janet Woodcock, Acting FDA Commissioner, and Dr. Peter Marks, Director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. All of our principals will provide opening remarks before we move into a question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question live, please type it directly into the chat box, or you can use the raise hand feature via the participant tab, and we will call on you to ask your question. You can begin submitting your questions at any time. Please remember to include your name and affiliation as well so that we know which organization you represent. We may not be able to get to all questions today, but we'll try our very best to answer as many as possible. And with that, I'd like to now turn the call over to Acting FDA Commissioner, Dr. Janet Woodcock.
Thanks, Aya, and thanks all of you for joining. Last week, as you know, the FDA authorized the emergency use of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19 to include children 5 through 11 years of age. The authorization was based on a thorough and transparent evaluation of the data on safety and effectiveness of the vaccine, including input from independent experts and our advisory committee who overwhelmingly voted in favor of making the vaccine available to children in this age group. Now, as a mother and a physician, I know parents, caregivers, school staff, and children have been waiting for this authorization. Vaccinating younger children against COVID-19 will bring us closer to returning to a sense of normalcy. And parents and guardians can rest assured that we conducted a comprehensive and rigorous evaluation of the data on the vaccine's safety and effectiveness and made sure this vaccine meets our standards. Let me briefly walk you through last week's action. First, the action was based on immune responses in children 5 through 11 years of age. But we also found through clinical outcomes that the vaccine effectiveness appears to be about 90.7% in preventing COVID-19. So the immune response data and the effectiveness data were both strongly supportive. Second, the vaccine safety was studied in a trial involving about 4,600 children ages 5 through 11, of whom 3,100 participants received the vaccine. Importantly, no serious side effects were detected in this trial. We anticipate children in this age group will be able to get vaccinated following this week's meeting of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which will discuss clinical recommendations for this age group. Our actions plus CDC's recommendations help us get closer to hopefully closing another chapter in this pandemic. While we've heard from some parents that their children have had COVID-19 and their children's symptoms were mild or hardly noticeable, it's important to note that data from the CDC that show that among children 5 to less than 12 years of age, there have been about 1.9 million reported cases of COVID-19. This includes more than 8,300 COVID-19 related hospitalizations through September of this year in this age group. And half of the children hospitalized did not have any underlying diseases or conditions. Tragically, COVID-19 was among the top 10 leading causes of death for children 5 to 11 years of age in the US. As of October 17th, over 146 children have died in this age group. These are very startling statistics. Vaccines are one of our strongest tools in the fight against this pandemic, and making sure younger children in our population now have access to them has been one of our highest priorities. Thank you. And now I'll turn to Dr. Marks to discuss more about our process for authorizing the vaccine. Dr. Marks.
Thanks very much, Dr. Woodcock. It's a pleasure to join all of you today. We recognize that there may be questions about how the FDA came to the decision that this vaccine was acceptable for use in children. And because of this, I'd like to address some of the specifics of the safety and effectiveness data to be as transparent as possible for parents and caregivers. The effectiveness data to support this authorization in children down to 5 years of age is based on an ongoing randomized placebo-controlled study that's being conducted in the United States, Finland, Poland, and Spain. The FDA analyzed data that compared the immune response of 264 participants 5 through 11 years of age who received the lower dose in this study to 253 participants 16 through 25 years of age from a previous study who had received the higher dose vaccine. The immune responses of the younger age participants were comparable to the older participants. The FDA also conducted a preliminary analysis of cases of COVID-19 in participants 5 through 11 years old, occurring 7 days after the second dose. And in that analysis, among participants without evidence of prior infection with SARS coronavirus 2, 3 cases of COVID-19 occurred among 1,305 vaccine recipients, and 16 cases of COVID-19 occurred among 663 placebo recipients. So the vaccine was 90.7% effective in preventing COVID-19. We also evaluated Pfizer's safety data, including their trial of over 4,600 participants ages 5 through 11 years old. And of these, 3,100 participants received the vaccine and 1,538 received the saline placebo. A total of 1,444 of those vaccine recipients were followed for safety for at least 2 months after the second dose. The most common reported side effects in the clinical trial participants included injection site pain, redness and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle or joint pain, chills, fever, and swollen lymph nodes, nausea, and decreased appetite. But most children reported side effects after the second dose, and more reported side effects after the second dose and after the first dose. And the side effects were generally mild to moderate in severity and occurred within 2 days after vaccination, and most went away within 1 to 2 days. Last week, we also authorized the manufacturing change for the vaccine to include a formulation that uses a different buffer, which helps maintain the vaccine's pH, which is a measure of how acidic or alkaline a solution is, and its stability. This formulation is more stable at refrigerated temperatures for longer periods of time, permitting greater flexibility for vaccination providers, such as being able to keep it in doctors' offices. The new formulation contains tromethamine, which is known as TRIS buffer, which is a commonly used buffer in a variety of other FDA-approved vaccines and biologics, including products that are used in children. So the FDA evaluated manufacturing data to support the change in this inactive ingredient and concluded that it doesn't impact safety or effectiveness. So finally, I wanted to address our comprehensive approach to monitoring vaccine safety. Monitoring the safety of all vaccines is a top priority for FDA. Together with CDC, we have several systems in place to continually monitor COVID-19 vaccine safety and allow for the rapid detection and investigation of potential safety problems. And those systems include the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, or VAERS, the CDC's text-based system called vSafe, which receives reports of adverse events following vaccination. And we also have the BEST, or the Biologics Effectiveness and Safety System, which can analyze information occurring in millions of individuals reported in large database systems in order to investigate safety signals that are identified by VAERS, or actually to search for them by looking at comparison to unvaccinated individuals. At the FDA, we're committed to making decisions that are guided by science that people can trust. Authorizing the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for children 5 through 11 years of age marks another important step in our collective efforts to bring the COVID-19 pandemic to a close. We know that working together will succeed in this goal. And now I'll turn the call back over to Aya.
Thank you, Dr. Marks, and thank you, Dr. Woodcock. As we enter into the question and answer segment of our event, if you haven't already done so, can you please type your questions into the chat box or use the raise hand feature and we will call on you. I'd like to first call on Erica DeWall, Director of Strategic Communications and Partnerships at Vaccinate Your Family, for first question.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. As a mother of a 6-year-old, I'm particularly excited about CDC's conversation this week, ACIP's conversation, CDC's decision. I did want to ask, though, one of the main stories that we started to hear out of the VRBPAC meeting last week was myocarditis. Can you explain a little bit about the risk of myocarditis versus effects from the actual COVID virus? And will that information be available in multiple languages?
Sure, this is Janet Woodcock. Obviously, the actual risk in this age group is not totally clear yet because it is a rare side effect. And so we don't know. What we saw in the adolescents was the peak was toward the earlier adolescence, and it seems to be a slightly lower incidence as you go down toward 12. So we don't know what will happen toward the younger age group. Dr. Marks, you have more quantitative information on that.
Yeah, so I think the best we can say is that, yes, the peak of myocarditis, which is still a relatively uncommon side effect. Let's just step back. If one gets COVID-19, there is a significant risk of myocarditis in all age ranges, but in children as well. There is a question of whether the vaccine increases the risk of myocarditis, and there probably is a small increase, particularly noted in individuals 18 through 30 years of age. Risk there probably somewhere on the order of 1 in 5,000 or so, and those are cases of mild myocarditis that resolve rapidly, usually within a day. And do not, at least in the CDC's follow-up, appear to be associated with any long-term adverse consequences, at least over the first several months that there have been followed. It does look like the peak of myocarditis is at 16 to 17 years of age, and then it seems to be lower in the 12 to 15-year-olds, although granted, the data set is not as large in the 12 to 15-year-olds. The hope is that in these 5 to 11-year-olds, the dose of the vaccine has been backed off to 10 micrograms. If you look at the comparability of the immune response, it looks like that was done very well. It's almost a 1-to-1. So the hope would be that the risk of myocarditis in this age group will be minimized, but obviously it's something we'll be looking for. And we did not see any cases in the clinical trial, but that just says that it's not going to be a common side effect.
Thank you. Our next question is from John Lemich from National Association of School Nurses. John?
Hi there. I know that we want to roll these vaccines out as fast as possible. Is this the place to talk about support and guidance for school-located vaccine clinics?
Yeah, that's probably, Janet Woodcock, it's probably closer to the operation up at HHS that is actually distributing and with CDC. We have authorized this in many locations, including pediatricians' offices and special clinics can do it, but it's further downstream as far as who's going, how the arrangements will be set up. Dr. Marks?
Nothing to really add. I mean, it appears that that they'll be exactly as you say. They'll be arranging, I think, clinics. The idea here is not to use mass vaccination sites, from what I'm told. It's to try to do it more on a local level. But that's about as far as I can get with this. By the way, I realized I neglected to answer something in the previous question, which is that the fact sheets for the vaccine will be available in multiple languages shortly. Sorry about that, but at least I remembered now. Thanks.
We have several questions from Erica Siski from American Academy of Family Physicians. Erica?
Hi there, good morning. I'm going to ask you a few and you can tell me which ones are for the CDC, the White House, or HHS, but I'm hoping you can answer a couple. So the first one you already touched on, which is what resources are available to aid physicians in administering the vaccine. And then the other two are a bit more logistic. One is, where can physicians go to know where the vaccine is being offered in their community? We're really pleased at the local focus and the involvement of primary care, unlike the initial adult rollout, but a lot of our docs won't have the vaccine right away. So they just need to know how to tell their patients where to go. And then finally, what is the federal government doing to ensure equity and access given the limited quantities in the initial rollout?
Yeah, I can't answer those questions specifically, although I've been listening into what the administration is doing between the operation and CDC to distribute. As I understand, the vaccines are going to be widely available very soon, assuming there's a CDC authorization. And family physician, primary care, pediatrician should be able to get some for their offices. And I think much of it is going to go to, as Dr. Mark said, is going to be aimed at a primary care, because we believe that's where people will bring their children if they have a primary care physician. But I'm not sure how it's going to happen. Dr. Marks?
Yeah, just mainly to add that probably is a question for the operation and for the Health and Human Services. Although for patients to find a local vaccine provider, they can go to vaccines.gov. That should help them at least find a local provider, a local vaccine clinic.
Do you know offhand whether the vaccines.gov is making a distinction between pediatric vaccines and the regular COVID vaccine? Because not all COVID providers obviously are doing the child immunizations. I can ask CDC.
Yeah, I don't know that. I just don't know that at this point. Sorry. We can look into that and try to get back to you on that one.
We have a question from Nancy Foster in the chat box. Nancy?
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Good. Hi, Janet.
Hi.
Just wanted to know, can you help me understand why the FDA has decided that the Moderna vaccine needs a bit more scrutiny? And I know that's for safety reasons. I understand that. But the difference between that and authorizing the Pfizer vaccine to be distributed to everyone, including 5 and up.
Certainly. What we, because this is about myocarditis, as you notice in your question, and because it's a rare event, we can only look in large databases, and a number of large databases around the world, including what CDC is following, but not all of them. But many of them have reported that Moderna, which is at a slightly more potent, right, is resulting in these age groups at risk with a higher rate of myocarditis than the Pfizer vaccine, okay? And we're not totally sure of that yet. It's a comparative thing, and nobody's done head-to-head, actual head-to-head studies to find this out. But that's what we're seeing from the databases. And so I think a question arises as since the Moderna vaccine also appears immunologically and potentially clinically even be more potent. In other words, it is at 100 micrograms, in its indicated population, then the question arises, is this true that there's somewhat more myocarditis? And if so, is that dose-related phenomenon? Clearly, older people, my age, right? Perhaps for some vaccines need higher doses and they're more effective, but that same higher dose might in a younger person give a more robust immune response and therefore be more reactogenic. So I think we're just trying to sort that out. Dr. Marks?
I really don't have anything to add. I think you've answered it really well. Thanks, Dr. Woodcock.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. A very helpful answer.
Thank you. I'd like to call on James Baumberger from American Academy of Pediatrics for our next question.
Thank you very much. And let me also say that I've got children 7 and 10. So like Erica, have children who are very excited about being able to finally get the vaccine. And so I'm James Bomberger from the American Academy of Pediatrics. We represent 67,000 pediatricians across the country, and who are very excited to soon begin vaccinating younger children to prevent COVID illness in those populations. So let me start, I think, by thanking Dr. Woodcock and Dr. Marks, as well as everyone at FDA who played a role in reviewing the data for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine and authorizing it for younger children. We're obviously very excited and think that EUA is a big step forward. I want to sort of expand upon a question Erica asked about myocarditis and questions you might that clinicians might be getting from parents. We know that a number of parents may be reluctant to get their children vaccinated, and these families will certainly require counseling from pediatricians and other clinicians about the safety and effectiveness of this vaccine. So, from your perspective, based on the data that you all have carefully reviewed, what would you sort of suggest for clinicians when talking to parents about weighing the risks and the benefits of this vaccine?
Well, I think I'll turn this over to Dr. Marks in general, but what I have found with patients is probably the best way is an open question, because what they initially tell you about their concerns are not really their concerns if you give them space, which gets to the counseling issue and reimbursement and so forth. But I think one of the first things is to understand, which I think most people do, that there's a tremendous amount of misinformation out there on the web, and people may not volunteer that at first, but if you give them a little space and a few open questions, they may volunteer that they're concerned about some of this misinformation, which includes things like infertility, even injecting chips into people so they can be tracked. There's all sorts of stuff out there, or that there's been tens of thousands of deaths, including deaths of children after being vaccinated and so forth. Dr. Marks?
Yeah, thanks. So this is, I think it's a great question. I think exactly as Dr. Woodcock said, in terms of the general things here, I mean, compared to adolescents, if anything, there was less of the flu-like symptoms than there were with a slightly older population. So, I would probably say, particularly after the second dose, yes, it's possible it's going to hurt where the vaccine was given a bit. And especially after the second dose, there could be some flu-like symptoms, child feeling tired or muscle achy. But by and large, these things resolved within 1 to 2 days fully. Again, the kids did not seem to be as bothered, younger kids as some of the older children, and for that matter, adults. So hopefully that will not get in the way of people getting vaccinated. And the benefits of this vaccine are potentially quite significant in reducing the risk of the various adverse effects that occur with COVID-19, including myocarditis from COVID-19, the multisystem inflammatory syndrome, and the need for hospitalization. So all of those things, I think, are potential benefits. And then the other thing that is one of these that we can't exactly quantify is the peace of mind for allowing the child to be able to socialize more normally and participate in events with family and others, which is something that often goes unsaid, but is really important to be able to get back to now after we've been doing this for 21, 22 months. So I think that's where I'd leave it.
Yeah, also the risk statistics I gave when I was, giving my introduction, among the top 10 causes of death, 146 children so far in this age group have died with COVID, and so many children hospitalized with it. on the web, there's all this noise about, well, 99.9% of children don't have any problems, right? And that, so people who aren't used to translating these into absolute numbers and so forth think, well, there's no chance my child could be harmed by COVID. So I think on the risk side of getting COVID, some of that information might be helpful to counter what parents are seeing from the groups who are opposed to vaccination, which are false statements that are circulating. Thanks.
We have time for one final question. We have a question from Laura in the chat box. Any idea when under 2 years of age and under, when the vaccine for that age group will be available?
Dr. Marks?
Yeah, thanks. So right now, obviously, the youngest children up to 4 years of age or up through 4 years of age do not have a vaccine. It will probably be a couple more months because they were in the latest cohort to be enrolled. A few more months before something will be available for that youngest population.
Thank you very much. We've reached the end of our call. I'd like to give Dr. Woodcock and Dr. Marks a chance to make any closing remarks.
Well, as usual, it's a pleasure to talk to you all. And we know you're on the front lines. We'll try next time, if we do this again, to have more information about what the operation is doing on distribution, because clearly those are critical issues for you. We've been focused so much on getting through this review and making sure we understand all the data that I think we didn't completely focus on how it would be distributed. But we really appreciate everything you do and hope to support you in any way we can.
And I just echo, thank you so much for joining today. And we're happy in the future. If you get us your questions, we're happy to try to respond any way we can. Thanks very much.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today. The FDA Stakeholder Engagement Team is available if you have any questions. If so, please feel free to email us at FDA Stakeholder Engagement @fda.hhs.gov. We hope to speak with you again soon.